The movie begins with David Simpson, a former American soldier, speaking to a high-ranking military officer atop a building. David, who suffered mistreatment from his comrades due to PTSD, seeks revenge by plotting to assassinate top American military figures. On a snowy day, David executes his plan. During their conversation, they notice a sniper rifle aimed at them from afar. This rifle, controlled by David via a cell phone, is not ordinary. David uses it to fatally shoot the man he's speaking with. The scene shifts to a Syrian prairie where Corporal Sanaa, Brandon, Reese, and another soldier attempt to attack Syrian troops transporting drugs. However, Reese's shot misses, alerting the Syrian army and leading to combat. One of the American soldiers is killed by enemy fire, causing the Syrian soldiers to flee and the mission to fail. Back at the American military base, Brandon confronts Major Bidwell, blaming him for the mission's failure and the loss of their comrade. Brandon's grief is so profound that he decides to leave the military. A few days later, Bidwell met with his superior, the colonel on the Greek island of Santorini, to discuss the recent threat posed by a sniper targeting American military personnel and high-ranking officers. Among the victims was Thomas Beckett, recognized as the most reliable sniper in the American military. Thomas' death greatly angers Bidwell, and he vows to find and eliminate the mysterious sniper, identified as David Simpson. The colonel shares Bidwell's determination to neutralize Simpson, and they work together to devise a plan. The scene shifts to a bar, where Brandon and Sanaa talk about Brandon's decision to resign. Brandon reveals to Sanaa the reason behind his choice to become a sniper. Years ago, during a mission in Congo, all of Brandon's comrades were killed by enemy fire. This tragic event motivated Brandon to become a sniper capable of eliminating threats from a distance. During their conversation, Reese enters and expresses his frustration towards Brandon, urging him not to resign and emphasizing the importance of completing their mission. However, Brandon remains firm in his decision, rejecting Reese's plea. The tension between them escalates into a physical fight, causing other patrons to flee the bar in fear. After winning the fight, Brandon and Sanaa continue their conversation outside the bar. Brandon shares with her his quest to find his father, Thomas Beckett, who was rumored to have been killed by an unidentified sniper. Despite the rumors, Brandon believes that Thomas is still alive. The next morning at the military base, Bidwell briefs Brandon on the mission to locate David. He informs Brandon that David was responsible for his father's death. Unfortunately, Bidwell cannot involve Brandon in the mission. Filled with rage and convinced of his father's death, Brandon decides to pursue the killer secretly, without Bidwell's knowledge. Determined, Brandon leaves quietly. A few days later, Brandon covertly enters Syria. Meanwhile, at the United States military base in Syria, Major Shope briefs Bidwell and Sanaa on a mission to ambush a drug cartel scheduled for a deal at 6 p.m. He emphasizes the importance of eliminating all cartel members, despite the strong protection provided by the best Syrian soldiers. At the specified location, American soldiers use advanced surveillance equipment to monitor the drug cartel's activities. Once all soldiers are in position, the cartel arrives in vehicles. Unbeknownst to Bidwell and others, Brandon has also joined the mission, taking aim from a distant building. As the soldiers prepare to engage, a radio emits a noise, alerting the cartel members and revealing the presence of the American soldiers. This sparks a shootout between the two groups. The clash causes significant losses to the Syrian cartel forces, with Brandon skillfully taking out numerous enemies from a distance. On the American side, there was only one casualty, a soldier who died from a gunshot wound inflicted by a sniper from the Syrian cartel. Despite the difficulties, the American soldiers ultimately won, also destroying the military vehicle belonging to the drug cartel. However, the relief didn't last long as Shope suddenly got shot in the chest by a sniper. It was revealed that the sniper was David, who had lured them into the trap to eliminate them one by one. Just as David was about to target Brandon, another shot was fired, hitting David in the shoulder. To their surprise, the shooter was Thomas, who was believed to be dead. With his shoulder injured, David ran into the woods, chased by Brandon. Thomas, Bidwell, and Sanaa also entered the forest to catch David, choosing to split up to cover more ground. As daylight broke, Sanaa was taken aback by a female sniper, leading to a tense shootout and a demonstration of their combat skills. Eventually, Sanaa emerged victorious, managing to shoot the woman under pressure. Meanwhile, Bidwell encountered an attacker from the Syrian cartel, but quickly subdued him before restraining him. The scene changes to Brandon, who eventually finds David. However, Brandon lacks the experience to confront David effectively. Despite putting up a strong fight, Brandon is overwhelmed and severely beaten with his own rifle by David, leaving him drained. After David leaves, Thomas suddenly appears before the battered Brandon, much to his surprise. Brandon is stunned to see his father, whom he thought was dead. Bidwell, Sanaa, Thomas, and Brandon reunite, and soon after, Reese joins them. Together, they set out on a mission to track down David, traveling across the sea to the island of Santorini, Greece. During the journey, the group discusses David's background and motivations. Thomas reveals that David was his friend during his time in the Marines. The next day, Thomas entrusts his prized rifle to Brandon before they reach Santorini. The group of 5 then meets with the colonel to devise a plan to lure David, using the colonel and Thomas as bait, as they are both prime targets for David. Once all the preparations were finished, Bidwell, Brandon, Reese, and Sanaa positioned themselves on the hill, waiting for David to arrive. Meanwhile, Thomas and the colonel, along with the colonel's men, waited on the roof of a building, acting as bait. It didn't take long for David to make his move, shooting the colonel and starting to take out the guards. Bidwell, knowing where David was, tried to shoot him with his rifle, but the distance was too great, causing him to miss. Sensing the danger, David quickly fled. Reese wasted no time in chasing David up the hill. However, upon reaching the top, he struggled to find David, who was hidden in the bushes. Taking advantage of the situation, David ambushed Reese. Seeing Reese in danger, Brandon wanted to shoot David immediately. However, David cleverly positioned himself behind trees, making it hard for Brandon to aim. Exploiting Brandon's hesitation, David quickly killed Reese. Afterward, David escaped to the hilltop, where he had his gun connected to his cell phone. Brandon pursued him, reigniting their conflict. Amid their fight, Bidwell tried to help Brandon from a distance, but his shot missed. Meanwhile, David tried to eliminate Brandon using his remote-controlled gun, but his shot also failed to hit its target. After exchanging gunfire for a while, Brandon finally reaches David's hiding spot. The duel between Brandon and David resumes once more, but David emerges victorious again. Meanwhile, Thomas arrives at the hilltop and takes control of David's rifle. Just as David is about to shoot Brandon, Thomas steps in, firing a shot that severs David's hand. Before David can escape, Thomas delivers another fatal shot to his head, ending his life. Bidwell, Sanaa, and Brandon let out a collective sigh of relief upon seeing David's demise. Thomas promptly leaves the island after saving Brandon. In the end, it is revealed that the colonel survived the encounter, sustaining only a gunshot wound to his hand. This outcome signifies David's significant defeat. Not only was he killed, but he also failed to eliminate his target. So the moral of the story is, if you're planning to play hide and seek with a sniper, make sure your dad's a sharpshooter. And